Hey guys, so for this week, we're continuing on our research on ancient Mesopotamia to learn a little bit more. And today we're going to talk about specifically a Babylonian ruler named Hammurabi. Hammurabi is famous because he created this code, which was a set of laws that his people had to follow. So we're going to read this article together, and I will read it out loud the first time, but of course we want to remember to do our 3-read protocol. The first time we read it just kind of gives us a basic understanding. The second time we read it is for comprehension, and the third time we read it is to specifically get details and facts to support our comprehension. So I'll read it out loud, of course, for you this first time, but if you have the text-to-speech portion of a PDF, it'll read it out loud to you as well, which is nice. But of course, you want to be practicing your own fluency to be reading this. And then as we're going along, if you see something that's important, go ahead and underline it or highlight it. We always want to make sure that we're using that strategy to underline and highlight important information, because as we're going back and looking for answers, when we highlight or underline, it kind of gives us a little faster way to find the answers, because we're like, oh, okay, that was there. Oh, okay, so then maybe it's in this paragraph. So that's just another strategy to use while we're reading. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read the Code of Hammurabi, and then I'll explain your choices today on how you're going to present your work completion. The Code of Hammurabi. The Code of Hammurabi is a Babylonian code of law created around 1754 BC. And I'm going to go ahead and underline that just so I remember when it was created. The Babylonian king Hammurabi created the code. The Babylonians lived in a theocracy, which meant that their rulers were believed to be appointed by the gods themselves. Theocracy is a vocabulary word, so I want to go ahead and underline that so I know what it means. There we go. This is clear in the Code of Hammurabi, which states that the gods Anu and Baal had appointed Hammurabi to bring the rule of righteousness to the land. There are several copies of the Code of Hammurabi, but the most complete and famous was written on a large basalt stone stele. It is about 7.5 feet tall. The stone was first discovered in 1901 and is currently on display in the Louvre Museum in France. The stele was where the code is written is divided into 3 main parts. Okay, so I'm going to underline 3 main parts so that I remember. The first part, so here's the first one. The first part talks about King Hammurabi's investiture, or his crowning. His role is described as the protector of the weak and oppressed. However, his laws, which are described in the second part, okay, so there's the second part, were strict, severe, and in many cases cruel and unjust. Instead of applying to all people equally, penalties varied depending on the social statuses of the offenders. The third part of the stele is an epilogue that summarizes Hammurabi's legal work. The Hammurabi Code is a summary of laws that express Hammurabi's understanding of justice. So I feel like that's important. It kind of explains what the code is. Oops. Of justice. Okay. However, it's also somewhat of an expression of Sumerian and Babylonian life. The code is based on older laws and a consensus for how life should be lived. It's interesting to note that in the laws, offenders aren't the only ones to be punished. Falsely accusing someone also had harsh consequences. In addition, the code expresses the beginnings of the idea that individuals are innocent until proven guilty. Ooh, I'm gonna underline that because that's big. That kind of influences our legal protection here in the United States. Here are some examples of the 282 laws. Theft. Anyone who is caught robbing shall be put to death. Law 196. If a man destroys the eye of another man, they shall destroy his eye. If one breaks a man's bone, they shall break his bone. If one destroys the eye of a free man or break the bone of a free man, he shall pay 1 gold mina. If one destroy the eye of a man's slave, or break a bone of a man's slave, he shall pay 1/2 his price. Slander. If one accuses another with a capital offense, but cannot prove the charges, the accuser will be killed. As you can see, the idea of an eye for an eye originates in this code. That's really interesting. And then this is an example of cuneiform. Okay, so what you're going to do now is you get to decide on how you want to show your understanding of this information. So you can answer these 3 questions. Here's the 3 questions. Describe the 3 parts of the stele containing the Code of Hammurabi, excuse me. And that's what I went ahead and highlighted or underlined over here, the 3 parts, which is right in this, which is right in this paragraph right here. Question 2, what is theocracy? I underlined that. That's great. And question 3, how are today's laws different than Hammurabi's? Some of them are different, some of them are not. So how are they different? But you don't have to talk about how they're the same, but just how are they different? So those are the 3 questions you can answer. That's one choice. The second choice is, here is Hammurabi's code. Now, obviously, this isn't all of his laws because he had over 200 laws, but here are 10 of them, and you do not have to do all 10. You can choose just to do 1 page. It's really up to you. But you're talking about what is your interpretation of this law. So for instance, number 1, if anyone ensnares another, putting a ban upon him, but he cannot prove it, then he that ensnared him shall be put to death. What does this mean? What is your interpretation? What do you think Hammurabi meant by this law? What was he trying to do here? What happens if the person who ensnares another and he can't prove it, is he put to death? Like, what does ensnare mean? What is he doing that is so unjust that he would be put to death? So what is your interpretation of this first code here? And so you're going to read as many codes as you'd like, and then go ahead and put your interpretation of what you think that code means. So a little bit of analysis here as well. Okay, so of course, if you have any questions about what you're supposed to do, you're either doing your questions here and taking a picture and submitting it, or you are choosing to do your interpretation of Hammurabi's code. Again, take a picture, submit it, or put it in the text box. And then if you have any questions, make sure you see me. I don't have office hours today, but I am available through Google Chat or email. All right, thanks, guys.